Good morning, sir. Firstly, thank you so much for taking your time out and doing this podcast with us. Just a quick introduction of why we do the Yarn Bazar Stories, the podcast, is because of two reasons. A, we genuinely believe that it's important to share success stories of people like you to inspire a larger audience and to make that difference. And we also believe that there's a lack of role models in textiles, and if that is not there, it becomes difficult to attract younger talent to the industry, which is very important for the future of the industry.
Yeah, true. Very true.
We look forward to a nice interactive session with you, with you sharing your wisdom with the textile audience and inspire them.
Yeah. It's a pleasure to be there, Pratik. I think I've been associated with Yarn Bazar from almost the time that you guys came into existence. And I'm happy to see you're growing well, and you also got some very good funding for your organization. So it's very good.
The growth has happened mainly because of support from people like you, veterans like you. Otherwise, I mean, we just started with a small concept, and we were so happy to see validation when people like you come and support us.
No, I think it's a pleasure, because these are all things which are imminent to happen. The virtual media, the online medias taking to fashion in the last 10, 15 years. It is a trend which is irreversible. So there's a lot of good business opportunities within this.
Right. So, sir, we'd like to start with getting to know you as an individual. So, if you could give us a quick breakthrough down of your journey. So, how did you enter textiles? Was there like a family background? What has been your journey like?
So first and foremost, I have no family business background at all. My father is an Air Force officer. And when I passed out of school, we used to have, the 11th system at that time when I passed out. And the engineering was a 5-year course. I had applied to IIT without any hope of getting it. But I think by sheer luck, I got it. And then I had to make the choice. So frankly, the choice of textile engineering was more a default choice because I didn't get mechanical engineering at IIT Delhi. I got it in other places, but not in Delhi. And then when I looked at the curriculum, it seemed as though a textile engineer was nothing but a mechanical engineer, but dealing with only textile machinery. So that's the reason I settled for textile. Okay, so the IIT had a system of 5 years, out of which 2 years were common. And those 2 years, I did very well. I could have actually changed even to mechanical or electrical given my grades. But by that time, I realized that, I was not the kind who really wanted to slog and slog. And I thought that being in textile could be a good option for me. It would be easier because IIT is quite rigorous that way. And I think it turned out to be a very fine decision because I was one of the few 10-pointers in IIT for all the semesters that I was there. I passed out with a gold medal and got all the jobs of my choice. So that is how I got into textile engineering. Initially by default and later on remained there by choice. I started my career with, at that point in time, the best job which was available to a person like me was, there was a company called DCM. You may have heard of it.
Yes, suiting, right?
Largest industrial houses in India at that time. And of course, they're a North-based company. And, all these colleges, Lady Shriram College of Commerce, Hindu College, all these belong to the Shriram Trust. I joined them, and very soon I was seconded to one of the leading companies called Shriram Fibers, SRF, as it later came to be known. And I worked in SRF for a long time. I worked almost for 9 years. And it was a great experience. I think it's very important, therefore, that you make good choices on companies you join, because it gives you learning like nothing else, on the job learning, And the DCM SMT scheme was, at that time, the best scheme in the country, better than TAS. They started before the IIMs were set up in India. So it was a very prestigious scheme. And of course, the alumni of the DCM SMT virtually came to lead most of the Indian industries, especially in the North, because it was more a North-based group. HCL chairman is a DCM SMT, so Shiv Nadir. So there are a lot of such many cases. So it was a good break for me. I worked very closely with two people, with my managing director at that time, Arun Bharatram, and the CEO at that time was Ravi Sinha. Learned a lot from them. Moved much later into a company called Indian Organic Chemicals, one of the first producers of polyester in India after ICI and Calico. They were, I think, the third producer in India of polyester. We used to make fiber, filament, and then we were the first one to make bottle grade chips in India, and later on the first ones to make bottle preform. It was a very innovative company. It was also the first company, one of the first companies in the world after Wellman to start recycling of PET bottles.
Oh, wow.
We were doing recycling of PET bottles in 92, 93. You can imagine. Our PET bottles, that time there were no PET bottles in India. We used to import PET bottles from the east and west coast of the United States. They used to come by ships in barges. So very good experience. I joined them as the youngest general manager when all the other GMs were almost near retirement age, and I was just in my early 30s. And I had a wonderful stint with them, learned a lot, and then joined Mr. Lohia when he was looking for head for polyester marketing in India, when he set up his 3 CP plants in Butibori, Nagpur. And I think that was a turning point, because at that point in time, nobody gave Indorama a chance, because Reliance was really quite dominant even then. And they had invested a lot of money, and so had Mr. Lohia. Those 3 CPs were one of the largest investments ever in the polyester business, other than Reliance's Hazira and the other Patalganga investments. And therefore, to know that I could double the market for polyester, it was almost like an impossible task. When I joined that business, the demand for polyester was roughly about 18,000-20,000 tons a month for polyester fiber. And capacity, including Indorama and Reliance, new capacities which came up in Hazira, were almost close to 40,000-45,000 tons a month. So there was no choice. We had to expand the market. So you can imagine, to double a market which had been created in a period of 40-50 years, in a period of 1 year, to make that market go up from 20 to 40,000 or 45,000 tons was virtually a tall task. But I think I was able to achieve that. And I guess it was because of that success that I had at Indorama that Mr. Birla headhunted me out in 98, and I joined the viscose business of Grasim in early 99. So we were talking from 98 to 99, and again, great learning. Viscose business was in a very bad shape at that point in time, and I think there was probably very little hope for the viscose business, because polyester had virtually knocked the winds out of it, So I think I was very fortunate. I was very fortunate in my career to get 2 significant opportunities. One, to resurrect the Indorama's business, even though they struggled a lot with the startup before I joined them, and then later on to take their full capacity utilization of all CP plants. And coming to a competing fiber like viscose and to adopt it and to recompete back with polyester was probably one of the most significant learning experiences of my life. So how we got viscose back to where it should have been, because when I joined, many of their plants were working at 50% or even less capacity utilization. And this is after 50 years. Because Grasim, as you know, is a very old company. They started with India's independence in 47, 48.
Right.
And when I joined them in 98, 99, it was already 50 years. And they'd never seen a bad turn. But from 94 to 99, they went south. And from 99 to 2004, 2003, till I managed the marketing enterprise for the entire VSF business, created the brand of Birla Cellulose, created all the brands which exist today during that period, and grew the business back not just to full utilization, but got expansion started in India, in Thailand, and in Indonesia, and went on to become the world's largest manufacturers of cellulosic fiber. That business has never looked back. Just for you to know that a product which had been virtually written off as a product whose life cycle was over, because viscose started in 1926, 27. And by 90s, they said this future is over. BCG also asked us to sell the business. But to see that from 99 till today, that business has grown like no other business has grown. It has a compounded annual average growth rate of 8 to 9%, whereas polyester, which is the future fiber and was regarded as the future fiber, does not have a compound growth rate of more than 4 to 5%. And to see that we not just reverse the trend, but we grew it and it continues to grow every year, year on year. And of course, now with cotton imminently going to be in short supply, viscose has a very long and promising future ahead of it. Of course, there may be changes in the portfolio of generation of products to be used. It is possible that we may be making more of lyocell, the closed loop, environmentally sustainable product, as compared to normal viscose. So the focus even of Birla Cellulose in the last decade or so has been to move the value-added product portfolio progressively year after year. Two other things happened when I moved from marketing to manufacturing. I went and looked after a plant for almost a period of 4.5 years. This plant had been virtually written off. It was the Grasim's Harrier plant, called the Graslin fiber in the Grasim Harrier plant, one of the largest industrial complexes in Karnataka, had been virtually written off due to labor, environmental, and quality problems. Resurrected this company completely. Today, it's one of the best units, not just in the pulp and fiber business, but in entire Aditya Birla Group for manufacturing practices, world-class manufacturing excellence, employee engagement. In fact, it is the only winner of the Platinum Award in ABG's WCM in India till today. It's now decades. In the last 2.5 decades, we've been running these programs. And also in terms of Gallup's engagement scores, I think it went on to have the highest engagement scores in Gallup worldwide in manufacturing. Highest. I mean, it was just way above ABG Group, way above pulp and fiber, way above India manufacturing, way above global manufacturing also. So I think very heartening. That was my experience of hardcore manufacturing. And before I left the marketing team, I created what we call the Textile Research and Application Development Center, TRADC, which was a brainchild of mine. I implemented this in our Gujarat plant at Tharaj, Kosamba. And it is today truly probably the only one of its kind in the world where you can do any kind of application development and research and development. And it is probably one of the key reasons for the success of Birla Cellulose LEVA program is the fact that we had a setup like TRADC. In 2005, Mr. Birla asked me to do an acquisition while I was sitting at Harrier of a Chinese plant. And I went to China, I spent almost 1.5 years, and I acquired a company called Birla Jingwei. And that company continues to grow from strength to strength even after now, almost a period of 17 years. So I think great learning experience moving from marketing to manufacturing. Then Mr. Birla brought me back to manage pulp business as a pulp business there. So I managed pulp for a very short period of time, and that was till 2000. It was till 2007-8 till 2008, and in 2008 came a very major shift in my life. Mr. Birla, out of the blue, because of what I had done in all the places I had gone to, had sort of acquired the reputation of being a turnaround expert or a troubleshooting, executive. So he then surprised me and, of course, surprised the whole group by asking me to lead Aditya Birla Retail Limited, which was a completely different genre of business. It was like a fast-moving consumer goods, retail of food and grocery, and of course, other categories. It was a full slew of supermarket and hypermarket. I spent the next 4 or 5 years learning retail, and it was a great experience. I learned a lot. I learned a lot because I put in a lot. It was the hardest period of my life. I worked 365 days a year. I worked for those 5 years without even a single day's break. And in that period of time, we created the largest retailer in India. It was much bigger than, in terms of size, we had more than 2,000 supermarkets. We built about 8-10 hypermarkets by then. And it was a period of immense learning. I learned a lot. And with colleagues like Nagesh, colleagues like Kishore, went on to become a fairly well-acknowledged retailer in India and in Asia. I got an opportunity of being invited by Coca-Cola to be on their Eurasia Coca-Cola Council, which is a great honor because it's only meant for the best retailers in the world, and spent almost 4.5 years with them on the Retail Council. Again, a period of great learning. Came to respect Coca-Cola as a company because this was completely unusual for a company to invest in the growth of its consuming industry, not their own industry. So all the work that Coca-Cola Council used to do used to be basically for the retailers. And we had the world's biggest and best retailers as part of the advisory council of Coke. It was a great learning experience. Learned from many of my colleagues in Europe, Asia, and elsewhere. And ended my retail career as somebody who learned a lot on the job.
And I remember my first experience of walking into a Aditya Birla More, the retail format, in 2008 in Mysore. So we were in college, first year of BMS. We were doing an IB industrial visit to Mysore and Bangalore. And Mysore had this Aditya Birla More, and I'm not sure that time if Mumbai had one. Walked into that.
Bombay came later.
Yes.
But we put up a lot of stores in Mysore because, the company we had acquired, which is Trinetra and Fabmall, was a South-based company. So their earlier, whatever 100 stores or about 100, 120 stores were in Andhra, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, and Karnataka included Mysore also.
Right.
I expanded that network from that 120 store to 2,200 stores. So you can imagine, I was virtually opening a store every day or every second day. Otherwise, you can't open 2,000 stores in a period of 4 years, 365 into 4 weeks. It was a great period of learning. And because I spent 365 days on the job, and I was mostly in stores. I never would sit in the office. I would be in some store in India, wherever it is, on the launch, or just going and reviewing operations of each store, each region, each zone. So it was a great experience. 2012 March, Mr. Birla got me back to lead textiles. And 2012 to 2023 till I retired, I looked after for 11 years. I built the textile business of Aditya Birla Group. By the time I ended with the acquisitions and some divestments, we had a $1.2 billion business. earning an EBITDA of more than $100 million. And we were in 8 countries. So it has been a great learning experience, I would say.
I think it's a fantastic journey from the time you said, you joined IIT Delhi, textile engineering, to your entire experience so far till 23. Superb. So I'm sure you've had a chance to go through a massive learning curve and such great experiences. Since we were talking about viscose and polyester, just early this week, I was part of a healthy discussion around one question, which is what is better for uniform fabrics? Is it PC or PV? Would you like to, give your 2 cents on this?
No, I think this is, it's not a question with easy answers, because traditionally uniforms used to be in cotton and later on moved to polyester cotton. And polyester cotton definitely for shirting was a better product. But when you look at when emergence of viscose and what we call the comfort blend, 65-35 polyester viscose, it became a fairly ideal product for uniform fabrics because the longevity was better, the comfort was also better, and of course, it had a slightly better property in terms of wash and wear as compared to polyester cotton. And definitely polyester viscose was far superior for bottom wear and suits as compared to polyester cotton. Never took off in that region. And in shirting, which is the main place where polyester cotton finds application even today, polyester viscose is as good as polyester cotton. So I think I would say that it's a fairly indifferent decision. There are times when cotton becomes very expensive, so viscose obviously is preferred. But there are times when viscose costs also go up and the prices go up. But I think both are well suited for shirting, but polyester viscose is far superior for bottom wear, that's trousers and workwear, overalls, etc. PV is much better than this.
Right. Sure. Also, sir, we spoke about your journey at length at Aditya Birla. One thing that has always surprised me is, a lot of people I interact with who are part of the Aditya Birla group, they would have spent almost their entire lifetime after joining Aditya Birla till their retirement, right? If you could just tell us about your experience and also your understanding of what is the culture about, because I'm sure there's some attribution to the culture of people, retiring at Aditya Birla after joining the group. I think it'll be great for listeners, especially people who are running a company, building a company, to kind of understand what it takes to build that kind of a culture.
I think it's a very good question. And I've often thought about it, having worked in 1, 2, 3, 4 groups in my career. SRF was one of the best professional companies I'd worked with till then. IOC was a good company with a very benevolent owner. But when I joined, I was very fortunate compared to, I would say, I was one of those rare entities who had the privilege of being able to work with Mr. Birla very closely through the early part of my career with ABJ. And I did not know why I did not know why there was such a intense interaction, because Mr. Birla is not known for very high level of interactions other than at the review councils, etc. So the first 3 years, virtually, I would have regular engagements with him and found him to be one of the most incredible bosses and leaders I've ever worked with. And I guess he was very sincere and he was very diligent and he was very passionate about making ABG one of the best corporations in the world. And I think I was very lucky because, after joining and turning around the pulp and fiber business, I think people looked at me as somebody who has come and delivered, and chairman gave me every opportunity of being part of most of the interventions that we did in the group, whether it was around people, whether it was around engagement, whether it was around any initiative, talent development, whatever. So I was part of every pilot And I've seen this group grow from strength to strength to strength. And I can easily say, without any doubt in my mind, that it is probably one of the best companies in the world, not just in India. In India, of course, I have no doubts that it's probably one of the best companies in India. But when I went to Harvard and I went for AMP to Harvard and I spent those 3 months there with CEOs of all large corporations around the world, especially the US, I realized that we were doing so many things in ABG that none of those companies were doing, whether it was around people, whether it was around talent, whether it was around individual development of people. So I realized that, we were actually ahead of the curve. So it is no wonder that, ABG has gone on to become the great places to work in many of our companies and corporations and businesses around the world. And I was so delighted that last year when I retired, this year when I retired early this year, we got the news that our business, that's Jayashree Textiles, and the domestic textile business has also been appointed as a great place to work. So I think, it has been the culture. It's a very empowering culture. It's a very trusting culture. It's a culture which encourages people to take risks. And the person who's at the forefront of all this has been Mr. Birla himself. He's the one who has diligently, assiduously, over time, put in efforts, put in so many processes to see that the company moves from the erstwhile, family-run organization to a truly professional global enterprise. And of course, the portfolio today of almost more than 50-60% of revenues coming from overseas operations is not by default. It is by design, because the acquisitions have taken place systematically to keep adding more and more geographical zones, new businesses, existing businesses, strengthening portfolio over time. So I think it's been a great learning journey. My working personally with him in many avatars, beginning of my career in Grasim, then with ABRL, I was working with him directly. Then in textiles also for a short while, I worked with him directly. It's been a great learning experience. I can tell you that he's one of the men I admire the most in terms of being a great leader. And I worked with him for 24 years. I never ever see him lose his cool even once. No matter how badly the businesses were doing or how good they were doing, he was always supportive of the teams. So I think it is a culture, it is a process, it is particularly in terms of its people. The investment in people is huge in Aditya Birla. So I think those really make for me having stayed on till my retirement. And of course, I continue in some form with Mr. Birla.
Sure. And so since you've had such a long professional career and spent time with some large groups, including Aditya Birla, what would be the one most important thing you would say you would have learned in your life, and how has that kind of changed your outlook towards life, either personal or professional?
So what I was saying is that one of the greatest learning was that good leaders can actually get ordinary people to do extraordinary jobs. And I think that is a great learning, because, when you look at the normal distribution curve, you will always see that the number of averages are always very high in the plus minus 3 sigma region. And it is by harnessing the power of the normal people, that you can create extraordinary results. The second learning really is that it is not about individual brilliance, but it is about empowered teams and trusting and motivating your teams that you get results. Early on in my career, I was very, as normally is the case, very high level of achievement orientation. And I used to get very impatient when people were not keeping pace with me or not, being able to deliver at the speed at which I wanted them. And I would end up doing a lot of things myself. But over time, I realized that that's not the way to do. Because while I know that I can do the job faster and better, the whole purpose of having an organization and creating growth and learning for them is to get them to get there. And I think this was the second learning, that you have to empower your teams, trust your teams, motivate your teams, guide your teams to deliver. And normally a good team will always deliver. And third learning was that there is no substitute for engagement. And which includes communication, which includes open communication, being accessible to your people. So throughout my career, my style of working was that I was always engaged with everyone, right from the person like the clerical staff or the peons or the liftmen in the office, the telephone operators, to the CEOs of whom I had. So everyone knew they could approach me at any time, they could talk to me, they would find always a helping hand if there were genuine concerns. The thing I used to tell people is that if there's anything that is bothering you, which is affecting the company, please come to me. Or if it's affecting you and it's not something which is because of your work, please come to me. So over time, I had engagement with my people as a great strength. And I guess that's a learning for me. And I would say that, I felt blessed when in March 23, I had farewells in many, many countries. I had almost close to 15,500 employees, amongst the largest in the group out of all businesses. And the kind of love, affection, and the kind of, the kind of emotional upheaval that I saw on my retirement was something which made me feel that my life had been purposeful and I'd achieved something in my life by having so many people love me. So, yeah, that was a very emotional moment. And the farewells lasted for more than a month across so many countries, so many units. And to know that people's feeling, despite cultural differences, because the Thais are different from the Indonesians, they're different from the Europeans, they're different from Filipinos, but the emotional upheaval that I saw in every unit that I went, because at about 12 units I was managing, was the same. And the emotional feeling of love, affection was the same. So I think these are three very, very big learnings over my lifetime, working for different groups. But ABG was, of course, I would say the crowning piece of my career.
Thank you so much for sharing that, sir. In fact, if you don't mind, I would definitely like to ask you what you just mentioned. How was it retiring from such a large group after spending so many years? Like you said, I'm sure it was so emotional. I can feel, the emotion when you're telling me about it. But would you like to share, like, very quickly, that moment of you said it was a month long of retirement, the farewell. But would you like to just throw some more light on this?
Yeah, actually, it is very emotional for me even now. So I really can only say that I felt blessed. I felt truly, fulfilled that a single leader could have made such a big difference in the lives of 15,500 people over a period of whatever 10, 11 years that I managed them. And it was very, very emotional at every location. And the kind of programs they put together, I'm told that it is the first time in the history of Aditya Birla Group that such a farewell has been seen for a leader. It's never been seen because it spread across different countries, different units, and it went on and on. And each show was like a mega spectacle, and And each one of them, I think you would have seen most of them on LinkedIn or on they're on YouTube also. And it was emotionally very, very, it was like a catharsis. It you felt good, but you felt very sad at the same time. That's all I can say.
Yeah, I mean, I also feel so moved listening to that. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. And also that, brings an interesting question. How easy or challenging it is to manage a business which is multinational in a way where, you're managing multiple countries, right? Every country with its own culture, its own people. How did you manage that?
That's I would say it's a question which is a very profound question, because when you see different cultures, people behave very differently. I mean, their way of learning, their way of being led, their way of leading is all very different from a Thai, an Indonesian, a Filipino, a European, an American. I mean, very different. A German, very, very different. But there are certain universal truths. And I think if one understands those universal truths, first is you need to respect every culture, number one. You need to respect the tenets of every. Like I said, every culture is different. The way they learn, what they eat, what are their practices. So the fundamental thing to begin with is that you must respect every culture. You must not think you're superior, you're an Indian, you're brighter, and you come and you think you'll teach them everything. No, it doesn't work that way. First and foremost, respect them, respect their culture, respect their traditions, respect their learning habits, respect their work-life balance. And that's the first point, starting point. The second are universal principles. Fairness, justice, equity, inclusion, and most important, meritocracy and a very fair performance management system. Actually, each one of these are crucial. You got to be just, you got to be fair, you got to be equitable, you got to be inclusive, you got to be, you got to have a sense of meritocracy, that it is not about anything else other than your work and your performance that matters. So once people see that you are true to this, and wherever I've worked in my last 41 years of working, even from beginning of my career, I realized that these tenets are very important. And people respect these tenets. Even the most difficult people respect these tenets. So I think, respecting people and then giving them not just respect, but giving them opportunities, motivating them. And every meeting of mine in these 12 years that I've managed overseas businesses has been always to say that I want all my leaders to emerge from the local teams and not be Indians brought in from different parts of the world. And it's not so easy to implement because, you have your own processes, your own business way of working. But over time, I've realized that the people in the company, the locals, they're capable of as good, if not better results than what you can give. And we saw this in a very beautiful way that, for many years after I acquired the Chinese company in 2006, the company did not do too well because it was full of Indian expatriates running the show. But somewhere a few years ago, they decided that they will remove all the Indian expatriates and get the Chinese to run the company. And there was complete transformation in the way the company ran after. So it just shows that, managing transnational businesses, different cultures, requires different skill sets. And you have to be empowering, you have to be inclusive, you have to give opportunities for local leadership to emerge and run. I think these are all, we think these are simple, but they don't come naturally to every leader. Because leaders have their own cliques, they have their own, agenda. But if your agenda is to build a great business and to have people there being happy, then this is the way to go about.
That's a great one, sir. Also, what are some efficient, let's say, marketing and branding strategies for a textile business? And I feel it is very important because if you look at the Indian textile landscape, it's 83% SMEs, right? Most smaller manufacturers, whether it's yarn or fabrics, gray or finish, or anywhere else in the value chain, we've constantly heard them saying or believing that their business or their sales is dependent just on price and quality. Whereas in every segment, there are a few businesses amongst the smaller players who have kind of been able to establish certain brand perception wherein they're able to command a certain price premium. So if a small business owner were to ask, how can I create a branding or a marketing to be able to, that allows my business to extract certain premium and not just sell on price and quality, how can they do that?
So firstly, I think, as you rightly said, India's textile industry is, particularly textile industry, is replete with small and medium manufacturers, maybe more small. And the SMEs make up, and the organized sector is actually very small. Having said this, I think one of the biggest challenges, whether it is for the small and medium enterprises, is the go-to-market bit and creating brands. And the same challenges is there for the large companies too, in the organized sector. The challenges are no different, but obviously for a small and medium enterprises, funding of these programs are more difficult than for a larger company. I think branding and marketing is very, very essential. I'll tell you, when I launched the Birla Cellulose brand in 2001, 22 years ago, called Birla Cellulose, and created the sub-brands for Modal, Birla XL, everything. People thought that, this is not really required or not really relevant. But as we look back over time now, we realize that the brand has become synonymous with viscose worldwide. So whether there's a Birla Cellulose or a Lenzing, these are the only two brands people really talk about. Lenzing also did a great job on brand building. So the proof of the pudding is when we were confronted with the task of developing our market, of expanding the viscose market, and I'd set up the TRADC. The next logical step was to have studios and then to have partners in the value chain. So the program for LEVA and the LEVA accredited partner program became the fulcrum on which viscose was grown in India. And the way LEVA was branded and marketed, I think it is an extraordinary story for the world, not just for India. To say that there's LEVA inside, like Intel inside, because it's only a fiber, whereas what the consumer is buying is a garment in the store. So how do you brand a fiber? But the way they were branding, they branded LEVA with massive advertising programs, with the LEVA accreditation partner program, is an amazing global story of success of branding. So that's number one. Number two, we are the category leaders. In my last avatar in textiles, we are the category leaders for linen globally. And in India, of course, number one for decades. Right? But our challenge of branding started only when we started to go into retail. And why would anyone come to a linen club store and not go to a Shoppers or not go to a Zodiac or not go to any other brand or a lifestyle store? So the effort to make linen club something which people from different target audience in the demographic dividend and not just the demographic dividend, but also the higher age group, because linen is a very costly fabric. And like you said, how can I get somebody to pay a premium on a very expensive product, which is, and ours was the most expensive in any case, in India still continues to be, for a product which they're not even familiar with. People in India till 10 years ago or 5 years ago were not so familiar with linen. And to pay a premium over premium cotton is a big tall order. But I think we've succeeded. We are able to sell a product at almost a 5 to 10% premium over every linen producer in this country, including what sells in a Marks and Spencer or a Zara or a Uniqlo store. Our products fetch much higher price. And the fact that we moved from fabric to garment, and to have branded Linen Club Studio and to make it fairly successful, I think it's not too far away that we will have a 200 crore garment brand, or it should be very soon, from nothing. Talks about the commitment and the efficacy of branding. And I think it is something I'm totally convinced about, that you have to make consumers aware, you have to give reasons for consumers to go and buy. And most importantly, you have to differentiate yourself. Otherwise, you are left in the clutter. So I think there are many good examples, even online, of good retailers having branded themselves well. And of course, offline, there are many, many cases. So it is very, very crucial. And I think it is one of the most important areas for intervention for the small and medium scale enterprises.
Sure.
Who lack in marketing knowledge, branding knowledge, who don't have the wherewithal, and who don't have the funds. So, but I'm sure many companies will emerge in India who provide those services to small and medium enterprises.
Sure. I think
it's already happening.
Is definitely a great example, a game changer for sure.
Yeah, like these are my own examples. I'm not talking about anyone else's examples. And so I'm completely convinced that, both Liva as well as Linen Club have been great successes in marketing and branding programs. And it's not just marketing and branding, it is product, it's range, it's width and depth of merchandise, it is quality. Because the Partner Accreditation Forum created standards of quality, created a standard of quality for yarn, for fabric, for garment. And therefore, what you got from a partner at the end of the day was the best product that you can.
And it's more like creating a community or an ecosystem of that value chain.
Not just that, you're creating a community of people who feel great at being a partner of Birla Cellulose, because they feel that they have a certain quality and an image which is different from the rest of the crowd. So it's a prestige position to be a partner.
Sure.
So that works. It really has worked for us. Worked very well for us.
Sure. Sir, I have two final questions for you. Since you mentioned,
I think we're running out of time.
Yes.
So, yeah, let's
wrap it up, sir. Since you mentioned about quality, what are your views on quality and its importance for the Indian textile industry?
One of the things which is completely non-negotiable is quality. And it's not just the quality of the product. It's the quality of all your concurrent services which go with the product. It is about your OTIF. It's about your delivery. It's about your packaging. It's about your documentation. It's about the way your customer technical service person reaches to solve an imminent problem for a customer, apart from the basic product quality. So to me, product quality is non-negotiable. And this is where India, we always wonder why made in India is not so popular, why made in India is not like made in Japan, or made in Germany, is because consumers need to get that confidence of quality. And quality is not a quality of one time. The consistent quality over time even if it's not the best, but it is as good as the best. But it should be consistent. And therefore, to me, one of the biggest challenges for the Indian industry is to ensure that they imbibe the DNA of quality and ensure that quality, which is completely non-negotiable, not just of the product, but of the service they offer, is truly world-class. That is the only thing which will make a difference to how people perceive made in India.
Right. I think so. That's a very strong one, and thank you so much for that. And my last question to you is, what would be your advice, especially to younger generation who's either planning to join their existing family setup in Indian textile industry, or maybe start something of their own in the Indian textile industry?
Hey, I'll tell you, the world is changing to the extent that when we grew up, we had nothing but joining a company as in a job as an option. Today, the youngsters were coming out with many options. And it's very heartening to see a lot of them taking the entrepreneurial bet. Going in and doing things, creating startups, trying to identify a felt need, a gap in need, and then addressing that need. So I think it's very, very heartening to see that. And I'm very sure that in times to come, firstly, if you ask me about textile, I think textile is going to be an area of great opportunity, not just today, but for the next many decades. And why is that? It is because India has a tremendous advantage in terms of very many factors of manufacturing, factors of cost, factors of raw material availability in this country. We are the largest cotton growing producer. We are the largest jute producer. We are probably one of the largest producers of viscose and polyester. We are a very large wool and linen consuming country. So I think India has got everything going for it. Low cost labor, good state-of-art manufacturing plants. So India is a tremendous opportunity. The only thing which it lacks today is scale and size of its apparel operation. And that is why the China Plus is not really worked so much in India's favor as it has worked in favor of Bangladesh and Vietnam. Much more. In India's case, hardly any. We've hardly picked up any of the slack. And that's because we do not have scale economies in garment manufacturing. We cannot service a few million pieces of order. Even the big ones find it difficult. So I think India anyway will get there, I'm sure, will create these capacities and will benefit from China Plus and the fact that it has inherent advantages over most of the countries making textile. So I would encourage people to invest in this sector. And secondly, of course, like I said, people are looking at many new entrepreneurial activities linked to digitization, linked to the virtual world, linked to online, linked to delivering services to consumers where they feel there is a perceived need. So a lot of opportunities for youngsters. India is a growing economy. Even if we grow at 6%, 7%, we will still be one of the largest economies in the world. So I think great opportunities lie ahead for the Indian industry. And Indian job seekers and Indian youth in the years to come.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. I think great advice for younger generation. And I hope it inspires a lot of people and they understand where the vacuum is and where value creation can happen. And thank you so much for your time and wisdom, sir. Really
Thank you, Pratik. Thank you so much.